As a development agency, you can write a tenth of the software that you personally write as a freelancer and make 10 times as much money. And that is the nature of running a company as opposed to effectively running a one-man business, which is what a freelancing gig is essentially. You can make a lot more money and you can have a lot more freedom over your time and things like that. However, it comes with a number of costs as well. You take on a lot more risk, a lot more responsibility, a lot more stress. And so that is a decision to make, whether you want to go from freelancing into kind of growing a development agency. They are totally different games. But if you are curious on how to get from freelancing into a development agency, that is something that I can speak on. For the last 2.5, almost 3 years now, I've been running my own development company, my own software development company. And I did a little bit of freelancing. That was never my main thing, but I'm quite familiar. I've helped a couple of people start their own agencies as well. I do some private mentoring sometimes. It is not like where I make most of my money, but I've helped a handful of people do the same. And so I think I can speak a little bit on that. But one of the main things I think most people miss is like going from a freelancing thing to a development agency it is a jump that most people like don't know how to make, because it is the business skills that you need, which have nothing to do with software. And this was a struggle for me because I had a technical background, just developing and building stuff myself. And then I wanted to make the shift into a business and a development agency. And it was a very hard shift. For a long time. I actually almost bankrupted my company twice in the first year. I made a lot of mistakes over the last 2.5 years. And so, I made those mistakes by basically running my head into the wall because I had nobody to teach me and I had no idea what I was doing. And I hope to share some of that stuff publicly in case anybody else wants to do the same. But one of the big things is like, you have to think about business skills. They become your number one priority as opposed to development skills. The first thing is you have to professionalize a lot more. And I say this, in order to charge kind of like more expensive prices and things like that and command higher prices. Basically, you need to, as an agency, like you have to communicate better and you have to present yourself a lot more professionally. That means your website has to look really presentable. It's a company website, no longer a personal website. That's kind of step one. But even like your pitch decks have to come, you have to create pitch decks, for example, which is, not even something, that freelancers do. Like you just kind of ask for a price, or maybe you do a proposal, but you have to present yourself, and communicate in a way that demonstrates a kind of more serious professional outlook on things. And so one of the first ways you do that is by creating pitch decks instead of proposals. So, I pitch clients with a presentation that goes through who we are, what we do, how crucially as well, like one of the big things is learning how to pitch and sell better. I think that is a skill that applies whether you are a development agency or a freelancer, but, you need to get better at that if you want to get into a development agency game, because as a development agency, you, in theory, you will come to have to hire people. And if you want to hire people, you have to be a kind of rainmaker being the person who kind of gets money in and stuff like that. And basically you have to be able to provide for your entire team. And so you need to be getting better at selling. I can't speak. Those pitch decks are important. I would say communication is also something that's really key. There's this one guy in particular who I've worked with for a little while. And he was a freelancer, and he signed his first client under the name of his agency. And he came back to me and I was like, okay, blah, blah, blah. Well done. Congrats. Close the deal. And then I was like, okay, what's your communication cadence like? How's that? What's your communication structure? And he was like, we'll be talking over Telegram about it. And immediately I knew, he was still in the freelancer mindset, because that is how a freelancer thinks. From a development perspective, you need to organize things a lot more, because like personal messaging platforms are not professional. They're not. You have a lot of business that gets done over personal messaging platforms, 100%. But, you have to over deliver. Like I say this as somebody who, like when you don't have pre-existing resources and things, I'm sure that there are companies that can operate, with very simple things. But like when you are trying to make a name for yourself, you have to over deliver and show how capable and professional you are. And you do that by kind of going above and beyond. And communication is one of the best ways to do that, because, you can only over deliver so much on software. But you can really control the perception of that software by how much you communicate about it. And so, for example, in my company, we have Notion wrap-ups and documents and Loom videos that I send. Actually, right after this video, I have to record a video that I'm going to send to my client, which is going to include a little demo of what's going on. And I send those videos on a weekly basis. And I will, I'll explain what went on last week, what's going on next week. I'll do all of those things. And then I will add that video into their Notion document, which has a video for every single week, and they can check. Every single resource that's linked to the project is linked in that Notion document, so they can always access it. And then I also type up a version of that document so they can read it or they can watch it. And I'm going to send that. And there are companies who will do it twice as good as me, and I need to get there. And you know, it's a process. It's an iterative process that you over time learn, like how to communicate better and better. At least, you know, it was when I started, I was also communicating on WhatsApp and Telegram, and now that's different. I still text. You know, I use Slack most of the time for my clients. I think it's a little bit nicer, but there might be clients that still prefer WhatsApp, and that's fine. But we have a Notion document, right? And so like there is this centralized repository of everything that's going on. And it's a lot more controlled. And so anytime a client has a question about what's going on, they know exactly where to refer. They don't have to come to me. And so that's a step up. Like your quality has to really, really improve. I think that's a big thing a lot of people also don't realize. It's just quality has to be a lot better if you want to compete as a development agency. And then the other thing is then hiring. And that is an entire beast of its own, but you have to hire for people with standards. That is the major thing that you are hiring for. It's not technical ability or skill or whatever, but it is people who are able to tell when something is not good quality enough, and they're able to fix it themselves without you having to tell them. That is what you need. And those people are hard to find, but like there are plenty of people out there who do that as well. But it's a case of like, if you want to move into an agency and a company, you need people who can help you do that, because you need to focus on getting more deals and growing the company. And, you know, beware, it's a very major lifestyle shift from kind of freelancing. Like if you're a freelancer, you work your own hours, you sort your own deals out, and then you just service them, and then you find the next deal and whatever. And you can get very, very well paid as a freelancer if you become a very good, like if you become a hyper specialist in one particular technology, you can become one of the best paid consultants. And there's this guy, you know, who I spoke to a little while ago, like especially in the US actually, but this guy happens to be based out of Poland or whatever. And I think he charged 150 an hour for React Native development. And he's a one-man band. He's a consultant. A consultant is basically an upgraded version of a freelancer, but effectively he works as a freelancer, and he gets paid extraordinarily well because he contributed to React Native, like he helped build the thing. So he's extraordinarily good at it. But you can go down that route, which is basically like get hyper technical, really competent in that one particular area and do that. Or you can also get into development agency, which is the business. But it's a whole different beast of its own. And before you, like, ultimately you could probably make more money in the business, but the path to get there will be much longer and will probably be slower to make more money. And it's a lot more stress and a lot of those things. But also that's something that some people like myself, like I have a particular appetite for stress and responsibility. And I really enjoy it. And I definitely like the journey to get to where I am today has taken a lot longer than I thought it would. I mean, I'm definitely still not where I would like to be. And, you know, like in the grand scheme of things, my business is still very small, but we do more money than I ever have, you know, in my life. And that feels very nice. And, yeah, like I'm very happy. I love what I do, but there are two very, very different business models. But if you want to shift from one to the other, you have to think a lot about basically like you are leaving software engineering and you are entering business management. That is a fundamental like shift that you are making. And I think most people are not cognizant of that shift because they think a development company, because they know development is, you know, is going to be pretty easy because they did software. And that was my perception as well. And you only have the background to do some of the fulfillment, but the reality is half of the fulfillment battle, like half of the service itself, is in the communication, the client management. Like that is a job in and of itself. When I hire developers, my developers do not have to liaise directly with the clients. There should be one person that's in charge of client like communication. And the reason being like that in and of itself is a job. And so like, you know, it's not maybe a full-time job, right? Like I manage more than one client obviously at a time, communication wise. But you like that becomes a big part of your job. Your job also becomes sales, it becomes marketing, a whole host of things. Also even people management, like you now have to manage employees and make sure they're happy and make sure, you know, salaries are paid and everything goes right. So, you know, you host a lot of responsibility on your shoulders.